I want to talk about Dr. Garry Nolan. He was on another interview. Well, I guess it was an expanded version of the interview that he had recently with Ross Coulthart, and I'll leave a link for it for this video. It was over an hour long, but around 48 minutes into this video, he talks about his own experiences. And one of the things he talks about was when he was a kid between 10 and 12 years old. He used to be a paper boy in Windsor, Connecticut, and one early morning there was a flying saucer hovering over his head, and he talked about this in a different interview he had recently with Tucker Carlson. So this is the second time he was talking about it. But another thing that he brought up during this was that he may have actually had it even when he was younger, before this incident when he saw the UFO. He may have actually had an encounter with gray beings, the gray aliens. He said during this interview, again, I'll leave the link for it, and it's about 48 minutes into this video if you want to check it out. It's actually, the entire thing is really good. It's a lot of different interviews with different people, so I would actually recommend that you watch the entire thing if you're interested in this subject. And obviously you are interested in the subject, or you would not be paying attention to me. But anyway, he said not only did he see a UFO when he was between 10 and 12 years old, but when he was actually younger, when he was 6 or 7, when he was in his bedroom at night, he sensed that he saw little men in his bedroom, right? He said he was awake. He says, I knew they were there. I could see them. He said he doesn't remember being scared, right? And he did acknowledge that it could have been a dream. But the thing about it is that 20 years later, he actually forgot about it. Actually, this happened a few times over a course of a couple of weeks. He remembered laying in bed, and these little men were in his bedroom when he was 6 or 7 years old. But then about 20 years goes by, and he was walking around a used bookstore, and he came across the front cover of a book. He thinks it might have been the Whitley Strieber's Communion, which had a famous picture on the cover of a famous drawing of a gray alien. And he was shocked, because that's what he remembered seeing in his bedroom when he was a kid. He had no idea, leading up to that point, that this kind of thing could be real, right? So he dropped the book, and to him that was a revelation then. So then I guess he did think it was real. So this guy, it seems like, in addition to having an interest, showing an interest in UFOs and it's obvious right now, right? It's obvious there's a presence there. I already know that, right? I think this guy knows it too, and he's not afraid to talk about it. And I know some people will think, well, how come he never talked about this before? Well, that's how I want to get into that. Talking about seeing a UFO is one thing, right? But then, talking about seeing beings, that's a whole other ball of wax. You have to even look at, back in the 40s and the 50s, when, people started seeing flying saucers, they were reported all the time. People didn't want to talk about, not even any UFO researcher really wanted to talk about beings, alien beings. It just seemed too fringe. But really, why? Why would it be fringe? If there's flying craft out there, there must be occupants, right? There must be pilots in there operating the thing, right? But it just seems, it's crazy enough to think that there's flying saucers, that these objects are from another planet. But for whatever reason, in a lot of people's minds, it's just a whole nother step into the fringe when it comes to the possibility that there's beings in there. And really, what is the surprise? Why be surprised about that? Because obviously, these objects were manufactured somewhere, obviously, right? Obviously, somebody must be controlling them, whether it's manually or remotely or automatically. So who's behind it? If they're from another world, they're not going to look like us, most likely, right? So, but that's how it was. In the 70s, for instance, there was the late UFO researcher Leo Stringfield, right? This guy, he was one of the first to start looking into crashed UFOs with alien bodies. Nobody wanted to talk about that. This was before the Roswell story came out. He was one of the first people to start looking into that. That even to a lot of UFO researchers back in the early to mid 70s, that was, that was taboo. That was going a step too far. That sounded a little just too crazy to even get into. But he was brave enough to, take those steps and do those studies and look into those kind of things. So it's just one of those things where, we really shouldn't be, just because he's saying this now, I could understand, okay, it's one thing he's talking about. The CIA approached him, over 10 years ago now. Hey, we want you to look into these cases. These military personnel got too close to UFOs and now they have brain damage. Okay. So, okay. He's looking at that. Now he's talking about that. He comes forward with his story about the, seeing a UFO when he was a paper boy. He talked about that before, but now he's taking it a step further and he's saying he might have encountered little gray beings when he was a child, when he was even younger than that, when he was 6 or 7 years old. They were in his room. That's what he remembered. And then, of course, 20 years later, he sees a picture. I mean, in a way, that's similarly what happened to me. It was, when I was a kid, I had no idea. When I was a kid, I had an experience in 1977. Now, I didn't see the being face to face, not that I remember anyway. All I know is that there was something in my room and there was this loud humming sound. I woke up in the middle of the night. I was about 8 years old, going on 9. Right, I could hear this loud humming sound in my room in the attic that I shared with my brother Dave. Right, and I could see clearly there was an arm. There was a shadow of an arm and a hand getting closer to my head and then further away. It was moving close. It had 3 fingers. That was it. 3 thick fingers that came to almost points. Right, and I was scared stiff. I thought it was a demon. Right, and I'm laying there in bed, I hear this humming sound. There's some presence there. I'm like, who's there? What's there? What's going on? Nothing. This thing just keeps, it was like a ritual, getting closer to my head and further away. So I'm scared out of my mind. This thing just keeps doing this. I could hear this humming sound. It was constant. It never stopped during the whole time, that humming sound, whatever it was. Was it a flying saucer hovering above the hovering above the house? Was it the power how did the thing get in the room is one of the questions, right? I don't think it came, a lot of people say these things come through the wall somehow they're able to bend things, somehow and walk through walls. Who knows how, is that how it got in? And that sound is, what makes it happen. Maybe that was, part of the, that sound is, something that happens when they do walk through walls, I don't know. Right. But anyway, I'm laying there and this thing is there. Right. I can see the arm. There's clear, no question about it. Right. There's something in the room. There's a being in the room. I can see its arm. I can see its hand. I sense its presence and I hear this sound that I never heard before or since. Right. And so I peek out of the blanket in the direction away from where that thing was. I'm looking over the other side of the room and I can see my brother Dave sleeping in his bed. He's facing toward me. I start screaming to him, but that sound is somewhat muffling my voice, but I'm still screaming and he's not waking up. Then I'm really terrified. I'm yelling for my mom and dad. Nobody's coming. Then I have to, the next thing I do is I resort to prayer. That's all I knew. I didn't know what else to do. And I'm praying and praying. Then I would have my eyes closed. I would open them up. The thing is still there. It wasn't going away. And then eventually, somehow I passed out. And then I woke up the next day. It wasn't like waking up from a nightmare, but there was some presence in the room. There was something there. All right. I know the difference. I've had some dreams before in my life where they seem completely realistic. But later on, you figure it out. Yeah, no matter how realistic it was, it still was a dream, right? This wasn't a dream. I was wide awake. And again, this whole thing lasted for 20 minutes. There was something in the room. Of course, nobody believed me the next day. A lot of people don't believe me today. But there was something there and it wasn't human. I'm telling you right now. But, that's the whole thing. There's nothing, nobody should be afraid of bringing these things up. But I do understand why, that Nolan would be afraid. Now that story there, I was afraid to even, I didn't even know how to tell my friends at the time. Like I remember telling some of them saying, I just think it was the devil or the demon. That's all I could say. But then again, as time went on, I realized when I saw some show like 10 years later, similarly to how Garry Nolan, realized, I saw some show about alien abduction. And I was, that was my aha moment. So, they go hand in hand, these things, alien beings, flying saucers, they go hand in hand. There's nothing to, something has to operate the thing. So there should be nothing, a lot of people will tell you, a lot of the debunkers out there, that's just too crazy for them to think about. But there's nothing crazy about it. That's real. They're here. These guys can go denying it and making fun of it all they want. But the reality is it's real. And there are beings operating these things, obviously. And, I don't know what they're up to. I don't know what was going on in my room that night, or if they ever, for all I know, maybe I get abducted all the time and I don't even know it, right? I guess that could be possible. I don't know. But that was the only time I know of where there was something there and it was not human. And here all these years later, I'm still talking about it. And it looks like finally we're going to get to disclosure. I think maybe I'll have some answers. Maybe if the government really comes clean on this, maybe I'll finally get to know if, I'll be vindicated. When I was younger, a lot of people would say, well, it was probably a dream, No, it was real, because these things are real, right? They're real. And there are people out there who know, who are listening to this right now, right? They know too.